So you all got your drinks? Lovely. Right, I want to say thank you to Kay, first of all, for inviting me to come and show you some nature photos, or wonders of God's creation, as I've called it. And about 4 years ago, before that horrible thing we know as COVID-19 happened, I did a couple of presentations in this very room, one for the Mothers Union and one for the Mature Companions Club. And at the end of one of those presentations, a lovely lady came up to me and said that while she'd enjoyed all my photos, she was a bit disappointed that there weren't any frogs. So I've started off with a frog, but I don't think she's here. I think it was Dot. Yeah, I know that's Dot, but there's another Dot. Yeah, I think it was her. But if you know different, let me know. So yeah, here's a marsh frog, which I took over about a mile north of Lakeside Shopping Centre at a place called Davy Down. And those first two presentations that I did, I called them Naturally Curious, my journey into nature photography. And it was on the back of that I decided to rename my fledgling YouTube channel as Naturally Curious UK. I couldn't call it Naturally Curious because there was already a channel called that, which was a young lady doing makeup tutorials. And last time I checked, that wasn't me. So so I called it Naturally Curious UK, and I've got over 200 videos on there now and nearly 500 subscribers. So I'm never going to be an influencer, but I just enjoy making my little films. So Martin, our beloved vicar, asked me a couple of weeks ago before the church service to get up during the notices and say why I take photos. Now, I wasn't quite sure what he meant, whether he meant why do I take photos in general, or why do I get up in the service and point my phone at the congregation. It was the latter that he meant, but as Martin likes to say, it got me thinking. And I thought, well, why do I take photos? I take nature photos is what I take. Why do I take photos of nature? And really it's an appreciation of God's wonderful creation. So that's why I do that. But it's not his creation I worship, it's him. Okay. Now the subtitle of this talk, I'll tell you in a minute. Although you're welcome to ask questions, you are welcome to ask questions. You don't have to wait till the end. That is a Dagenham Chase, okay, and we may see more of that scene a bit later on. But yeah, I marvel at his creation, and as it says in the song, who paints the skies? Right, so the subtitle of this talk is Nature on Your Doorstep and Beyond. Now, you can't get much closer than my doorstep than this. This was literally inches from my back door. Now, I know it looks like a tropical island, but it's not. That there is a small patch, only 2 inches across, of what are known as liverworts. Now, liverworts are related to mosses. In fact, you can just see some little bits of moss in between the leaves of the liverworts. But those things that look like palm trees, they are, in fact, the fruiting structures of the liverwort. So, yeah, if you get down close up to stuff, it's amazing what you can see sometimes.
And you've blown that right up?
Yeah, blown it up, yeah. They got really close and blown it up. So, venturing only slightly further than my back door, let's see what else I've been able to photograph in my garden. Starting with... Now, is it a butterfly or is it a moth? Put your hands up if you think it's a moth. I've got a few hands up. Put your hands up if you think it's a butterfly. It is a butterfly. Do you know how we tell the difference? It's the antennae. If they've got club-shaped ends, they're a butterfly. If they're straight or just slightly feathery, then they're going to be a moth. But we've actually got many, many, many more species of moth in the UK than we have butterflies. But this is a comma butterfly, and that's another photo of the same species on a leaf. It's not moth-eaten, it's in pristine condition, but those scalloped back edges to the leaves are a characteristic of this species. Another one I get in my garden is this one, which is a holly blue butterfly. It's not on holly there. Another plant that brings them in is ivy. Ivy is very important to this species. If you're going to cut your ivy back, do try and leave at least some, because it does bring in a lot of interesting insects and butterflies. Well, butterflies are insects. Now this photo is one of what are sometimes known as the cabbage white butterflies, which is a sort of broad term covering a few different species. This one is a small white, and the wings look yellowish with the sunlight shining through. I took that photo not this summer, the summer before, and the opportunity to take that photo was thanks to the fact that I had a mild dose of COVID-19. So I was off work for a few days. I was only bit rough for a few days, but the rest of the time I was fine, but I couldn't go back to work until my little line had disappeared on my lateral flow test for 2 days. So while I was convalescing, as it were, I was doing a bit of photography in the garden. Now some of you may recognise that photo because it is being used for this year's verse of the year at St Chad's here. So small white butterfly on the lavender. 5 years ago, after church, headed home. It was February, headed home 2018, and looked out of my kitchen window, and this is what the sight that greeted me. 2 pristine foxes, a male and a female, in really good condition, and it was really nice to see that. I got some nice photos and video footage of those 2. Foxes are a bit of a marmite animal. Some people love them, some people hate them.
I hate them.
Yeah, like I say, some people hate them. I love them. They're an apex predator, top of the food chain, and really very adaptable animals. Everyone loves a hedgehog, don't they? Yeah. We're fortunate to get them in our garden sometimes. This year it was only sort of during the spring up until about the middle of June, and then we haven't seen a hedgehog again. A few years ago we had 2 hedgehogs. Don't know whether or not they bred, but the male sort of goes in circles around the female, making funny grunting and puffing noises to try and convince her to let him have his way with her. But you can help hedgehogs come into your garden by leaving 5-inch gap at the bottom of your fence or wherever. So if you can do that, please do. Do not put out bread and milk for them. They're lactose intolerant. Milk can make them very ill or even kill them. Dried cat food is best. Your classic Cockney sparrow. Okay, that is a male house sparrow sitting on a fence post in my garden. Sparrows are not as common as they used to be in London. London Borough of Barking and Dagenham is one of the better boroughs for them, but they've suffered as a result of habitat loss and sort of people paving over their gardens or using plastic grass or decking their gardens over. So it's habitat loss that's the main thing that's affected them in this in the London area. But the thing about the house sparrow is the males and the females don't look the same. They have what's known as sexual dimorphism. So this is what the female looks like. Okay, a delicate cream stripe above the eye, very nice. But if you want a bit of colour, can't do much better than one of these, goldfinch. A little bit smaller than a sparrow actually if you get them side by side. They're quite delicate, dainty birds. The adults, the males and the females look the same, okay? But the juveniles look like this, okay? They haven't got the red face and the black and white markings on the head. They're basically what a bird person would call a little brown job. Okay, but they've got the golden flash in the wings on the black and white wings. They've got the same sort of tail as the adult. And sticking with goldfinch, had one of these in my garden. Not the pound coin, obviously, but I had that anyway. But that's just to show you, just there for scale. That's a goldfinch wing feather, which in itself is a thing of beauty. Well, it's next to a pound coin. Yeah, but the wing feathers are always the biggest feathers on a bird, or well, the tail feathers sometimes. Now, what's that? It's not a chicken, no, it's smaller, very small bird. No, smaller. That is a wren. A wren, not in classic wren pose, it has to be said. It's on my shed roof, sunbathing. Now, the reason birds sunbathe is it helps to bring some of the oils out onto their feathers, which keeps them in good condition. The other thing some birds will sometimes do is they'll spread themselves out on the ground in the vicinity of an ant's nest. So the ants come up into their feathers because the acid that the ants produce, the formic acid, acts as a conditioner for the bird's feathers. This is a more typical posture of a wren with its sticky up tail. Okay. They're also very loud singers, wrens, one of the loudest songs in the garden, which I haven't got available for you today, but yeah, they are loud singers for their size. Talking of tails, these are the cousin of the blue tit and great tit. These are long-tailed tits. Don't get them in my garden very often, although I have been getting them quite often recently. But over the years, just occasional visitors, they're having a go at the fat ball, and their tail is just as long as their head and body. Yeah, probably a lot of you won't have seen one of these. These are a winter visitor, member of the thrush family. This is what's known as a redwing. Now, in the winter time, if you go out, in the sort of autumn time, if you go out after dark into your garden, and if it's quiet enough, you might sometimes hear a seep call of up overhead, and that's redwings coming in from Scandinavia. It's always one. So that's the redwing, member of the thrush family, about the same size as a song thrush, and they come for the berries, as do their cousins, the fieldfares. They're a bit bigger, grey head, quite a rich ruddy brown back. They're more like the size of a missel thrush, if you remember from your childhood, if you've ever seen missel thrushes, less common nowadays also. Now, all of the birds I've shown you so far need to be on the lookout for this next one, which is a sparrowhawk. Okay. Yeah. Sorry. We do. They're quite a regular sighting in suburban East London. I see them sort of going overhead. They're not the ones that hover next to the motorway. That's the kestrel. This is the sparrowhawk. Quite common in around suburban gardens. Like all birds of prey, the female is bigger than the male, okay? Which means that they tend to favour different prey. The males would tend to go for starlings, sparrows and the small birds. The females will go for starlings and bigger birds like collared doves or wood pigeons. So yeah, that's what's on their menu. Right. So far, on the insect front, we've only had butterflies. So let's have a look at some different insects now, shall we? Still in my garden. That is a species of bee known as a hairy-footed flower bee. There are some nice names, some of these bees. And that is the flowers you can see there. In the past, we have sometimes grown a crop called flower sprouts, and they're a cross between kale and Brussels sprouts. And after they'd finished cropping one year, I forgot to pull them up, and they bolted and flowered, and these are the flowers of the flower sprouts, and a lot of bees do love those flowers. So sometimes it's worth leaving certain crops in the ground for them to bolt and flower, because it's beneficial to the wildlife. So that's a hairy-footed flower bee. I made a little video about them, and I sent it into Gardener's World, and they used it not this year just gone, but last year on one of their episodes in May of last year. So that was nice. This is another kind of bee that we get in the garden. This is a leaf cutter bee. Now, those of you that are gardeners, particularly if you grow roses, sometimes in the edge of the leaf you might see like a semicircular hole, and you think, what's done that? It's the leaf cutter bee. And they use bits of leaf to form cylindrical capsules to lay their eggs into. Okay, so that's the leaf cutter bee. Looks like a bee, but it's not a bee. It's a fly. It's a bee fly, so called because it looks like a bee, feeding on cherry blossom in my garden. And that one is, we've got a few different species of bee fly in the UK. This one is the dark-edged bee fly because the front of the wings has got a dark coloration to it. March and April are your key times to see them. And when they hover in a sort of diagonal posture like that rather than bees that are more horizontal. So if you see something hovering like that in sort of March or April, it might be a bee fly. From bees and flies to bugs now. This is a shield bug. There are quite a few different species of shield bug. This one is a common green shield bug. We'll see a different species of shield bug a bit later on. Right, on to crickets and grasshoppers now. This is a cricket. The way to tell the difference between a cricket and a grasshopper, same as telling the difference between butterflies and moths, is to look at the antennae. And with crickets and grasshoppers, you're asking yourself the question, how long are the antennae? If the antennae are longer than the head and body, it's a cricket. But if they're short, this is an oak bush cricket on the edge of our green bin that's got an orange sack on it. This is a field cricket, much shorter antennae, shorter than the head and body. So that is a grasshopper. Now, I promised you moths earlier on. Here's a moth. That is a Jersey tiger moth, and that's on the inside of the netting that hangs on our back door. He got into the kitchen and was on the netting, and quite distinctive markings there. But when it opens up its wings, we see more colour. Look at that. So quite a remarkable creature. Quite a decent sized moth as well, that one. This year just gone was quite a good year for those. I saw quite a few of those around about the garden. So worth keeping your eye out for those next summer.